So we know that about 200,000 years there happened a fusion within our chromosomes, and we know that because other, let's say, our hominid ancestors had a pair of chromosomes more than us, so they fused, they connected, and that's how we happened to be. It's another story for how it happened and how it is important for us. But when it comes to our history, imagine 200,000 years of our existence, and the civilization happened 5,000 years ago. So it is like 98% of all of our existence doing nothing, being just cavemen. Even considering the Neolithic Revolution 10,000 years BC plus minus, that we started sedentary lifestyle, it is 95, 96% of doing nothing, not evolving. I think that, we may have not evolved for, let's say, 20 or 30,000 years, but at some point, let's say 30,000 years ago, probably there existed at least some settlements or something like that, or like a civilization on the level of ancient Egypt or ancient Sumer. And it's very interesting because another, let's say, smoking gun is, we mentioned Troy and stuff like that, but I always wondered because we think that first civilizations nowadays within the scientific mainstream history, first civilizations are Sumer, Egypt, and India. But all of those three civilizations considered by us to be the first mention that they are older. In ancient Sumer, we've got Sumerian kings lists, which are telling us that before the flood, there were previous rulers, maybe divine rulers, and that the history takes us back to about 200, 4,000 years ago, which, 200,000 years ago would be even within the time frames of our civilizations. And before that, there is mention that there were some divine rulers, so maybe there were no humans or something like that. But we may say that, to some extent, the Sumerian kings list may be talking about, the older history, let's say 50,000 years BC. And the same in Egypt. In Egypt, we've got plenty of lists of kings, which are about 70-80% accurate with modern chronology of modern Egyptologists. But most of those lists of kings, but most, let's say, evidence-based, like the Palermo Stone, the Manetho's Kings list, or the Turin's Kings list, which are most reliable and which are in about 70-80% consistent with what we know about dynastic Egypt. All of those texts are telling us that the history is older, that before the first pharaoh, there were other pharaohs, that the history of Egypt is about 36,000 years before, the first Egyptians that we know. So, again, the same case with the older history. I love the most ancient texts, and it is like, as you mentioned at the beginning, that intuitive rediscovering, remembering of stuff. Because sometimes when I read, for instance, the Hermetica, the original Hermetica from ancient times and stuff like that, when you read this text, there are mostly interpretations of scholars who are only scholarly looking at it from a perspective mostly of materialism, not believing in that stuff. But I love ancient texts the most because by connecting all of those dots and all of the things, all of the information that I've read throughout the years, I can show such a holistic picture of everything and such gold wisdom and knowledge that I love the most ancient texts. But of course, I want also to explore the physical remains of all of that stuff. But I love the ancient texts because you read them from different eras, from different areas of the world, and I actually came, after reading them even separately, to similar conclusions. It is all the same. It points not only to the distant past, as we mentioned, but also I am interested in philosophical conceptions like the universe, consciousness, mind of God, and stuff like that. And it seems that most of these most ancient texts, not of the later origins, are telling us a similar story and showing us a coherent picture. So I'm also, one of my biggest projects is actually more of metaphysical, philosophical nature than only lost civilizations and stuff like that. This was, I think, just a beginning in my, let's say, research, because as I mentioned, I started let's say as a materialist, but it started to, I started accumulating that knowledge, and it started leading me to a more holistic picture of the entire universe, not only, focusing on archaeology and history. I think that we need to, explore more and expand the consciousness of people that there is more than just matter, and that we shouldn't limit ourselves. That's why I'm also working on things like new science, and I'm really into the philosophy of science, because I see things like this assumption that are very negative to humanity and may lead us to, as we mentioned in Kali Yuga, imprisonment of humanity into material beings. And actually, when it comes to this matter, because that's what I mean mostly when it comes to this consciousness shift, that we should go away from this material, also from the illusion of logic. Because, not every logical assumption, not every logical, totally rational argument is correct. You know, we are sometimes in the prison of the mind of our own basic assumptions, like the materialism in science, and I think that we should change that there may be much more. I don't force that Atlantis was real. I say that there is much more to our history, and we should be open, because we don't know what we will find in a few years. But there are a few other, calculations when it comes to those cycles. It isn't the only one. There are, plenty of different calculations in the Hindu thought. And one interesting is from a yogi, Sri Yukteswar, who was like a teacher, a guru of Paramahansa Yogananda from the Autobiography of a Yogi. And according to Sri Yukteswar, the Kali Yuga was actually during the Middle Ages. And his description of Kali Yuga is, I think, convincing to some extent. And before every other yuga, there is a period, like cease of fire period, that there is no yuga, 100, 200 years, because everything needs to get adjusted. So according to Sri Yukteswar, the Kali Yuga ended in 1900. So, 124 years ago. And it is very interesting, because after Kali Yuga, after the Dark Age, and we know that if we take into account, let's say, 300 years of intermediary period, so we may say that, the scientific revolution was actually beneficial to some extent, and we were in the Dark Ages during the Middle Ages, after the fall of ancient Rome and ancient Greece, then during the Middle Ages, we were in the Dark Age. We can interpret like that. And it's very interesting, because now we may be in this, Dvapara age, as I mentioned, age of energy. And energy, consumption, creation, and everything when it comes to energy made a boom during the 1900s, and nowadays is constantly evolving. So we may actually come back from this dark age of Kali Yuga and up into the other age, and this, have spirituality, have materialism, which is similar also to nowadays, that we have at the one hand atheists and scientific materialism, and at the other hand we've got all of those new spiritual movement. So it may be like that, or we may still be in the dark age of Kali, or we may say that there is a conspiracy theory that someone wants us still in those dark ages, and that's why he or them forces on us all of that materialism and actually disconnects us from the spiritual. I was living in a huge freedom. So I, as I mentioned, sit here and now and just, all the problems and all the things to make are appearing to you, you're becoming aware of them. So from a very, very early age, I was interested in the entire universe. Actually, I was watching documentaries, some things were understandable, maybe some things not, but I was just watching, skimming through those documentaries, skimming through all of the textbooks, books that I found at home, just for fun. I was like collecting minerals, collecting rocks, and being interested to know holistically in the universe, the earth, the history, in those areas mostly. And then, as my life progressed, the school, and at school everything was not interesting to me.
Too simple, too basic.
Maybe not too basic, but everything was ordered. at those early ages, we know everything about every topic. It is like that, there was no place for an imagination, because when I was like free at home and I was, watching every, let's say, documentary I wanted or skimming through any book I wanted that was at home, I had a freedom. I could do whatever I wanted with that. I could, speculate maybe Atlantis existed, maybe not, maybe the core of the earth is like that, or maybe not, I was free. But then at school, you are not that free.
Hello, my friends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to hit that like button and share the video with your friends. Please support the channel if you can. I appreciate all the support. You can become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or you can make a one-off donation via PayPal if you wish. All the links are in the description box below. Thank you.